Premier League title race is hotting up and the run-in has begun. Arsenal are one of the favourites to win the Premier League title, and they're definitely in contention. But to convince the world, and possibly themselves, they must beat Manchester City at the Etihad. Here's how they do it. Right. It's the big one. We have Arsenal against Manchester City. This is actually the last time that the actual title contenders can take points off of each other. So, how is the game going to break down, and how do Arsenal manage to claw victory away from the Etihad? Well, I thought about the game that they played against Liverpool and the way that they utilised this two-man almost forward line in correlation with Jorginho and Rice to make that four. I then thought about the way that Manchester United played against Manchester City in almost the same fashion, pushing up a midfielder to be next to the forward player and then creating that sort of box. And it's in this that I think Arsenal have quite a good chance of stopping, not necessarily beating, but stopping Manchester City. We need to think about the way that City play the ball. We know that Stones comes into midfield, but then it's about Rodri. You need to stop Rodri. If you stop Rodri, you're almost cutting off these passing lanes through into these forward areas. And what that allows, or what that stops, I might add, is number one, the service to Kevin De Bruyne, which is one of the major things you need to do, but at the same time it just inhibits the flow of Manchester City, and it's almost asking them to play an extra pass. You're asking them to go one way and round an extra way. You're asking them to go a little bit further, and if you do that, naturally, number one, you're going to be able to reset a little bit better, but number two, it allows you to give yourself a little bit extra time to set yourself to then go again. And that's a key and pivotal point. So the question is, how do you stop Rodri? I think this midfield four, or this four-man position, is something that can really be helpful for the way that Arsenal want to defend. If we think about the way that Manchester City go forward, if we move them forwards, Haaland's going to be occupied by Saliba and Gabriel. Silva will be taking up this position. Kevin De Bruyne is up here. Foden here. Walker will be on this right channel. Rodri in the middle. Stones will move forward into midfield as well. Diaz, Guardiola can go forwards as well. And we've got Doku. Right. So Man City spread the pitch really high and wide through their wingers. This gives extra space in between the actual Arsenal centre-backs and their full-backs. And it's this space that is utilised to really create half channels through the middle of the pitch. What you want to do if you're an Arsenal player is stop this happening. You want to stop this happening, and you need to stop Rodri. And in doing that, I think you have a really good chance of then countering, utilising the space in beyond, and really trying to utilise Martinelli and Saka to get better 1v1 scenarios against Gvardiol and Walker. So, how do we begin to do that? I think a man-marking system is something that can really, really help Arsenal. We saw Chelsea do something like it against Man City in their last game. I think it was at home. And I think it could really, really help. So Stones is going to be here drifting around. I think you've got to pin Havertz onto him. I think you've got to pin Odegaard onto Rodri just to try and make sure that you can stop him. Jorginho can hold Silva, and De Bruyne can be partnered against Rice. I think you've got to have Rice on this Arsenal left-hand side, because if you don't, the main issue you're going to run into is Kiwior. Kiwior up against Foden is a massive mismatch, and Foden's drifting through the channels, I think, is going to be something that Rice really needs to look for. The link-up between Foden and De Bruyne is something you really need to stop. If you do stop that, you stop Man City's right side. And naturally, that's something that you want to do. Over on the right-hand side, I think Jorginho can cope with Bernardo Silva. And then you're asking Ben White in the way that he can do a physical job on Jeremy Doku, who hasn't necessarily kicked on from his good start in the Premier League season. Saka and Martinelli are going to need to do some doubling up as well. But I think it's this man-mark system right here that is going to be the key to stopping Manchester City for Arsenal. Now, going forwards, what you're then asking is a lot of the two wingers and Kai Havertz. In doing this, they need to isolate, operate in this space, and really pressure Man City going the other way. Do this, and I think you naturally just give a little bit more time and space to their main creative midfielder in Martin Odegaard. Give him the ball, give him the opportunity, and more importantly, give him the space. And I think they have the option to really start to find passes into these channels, into these wide areas. If you want to recycle it back, that's okay. But it's all about making sure that Arsenal make the most of the space that Man City give. When we think about City going forwards, they like to squeeze the space. They squeeze and press up really high. And what this does is just make it that little bit more condensed, so that when a counter-attack does come up, it means that Man City have a better chance of winning it because they already have so many more players up in the opposition half. Now, what Arsenal do so well is playing out from the back. So you're looking at play-through in the likes of White to Jorginho to Saka. You're looking for Rice to Havertz to Martinelli. You're looking for Saliba and Gabriel to be really composed on the ball to make sure that they're able to push the ball forwards through that Manchester City press. Because once it goes to them, you're going to have Silva, you're going to have Doku, you're going to have Haaland. All of them are going to be converging on the football. When you get through that press, if you're Arsenal, you need to then make it count. And that's looking at the likes of Bukayo Saka, Martinelli, to try and beat their men to get into those open, wide spaces. You then got a problem with whether it's Edison or whether it's Ortega to make sure you win that 1v1 duel. I'm not sure who is going to be fit. That is another big question, but I've assumed that nearly every single Manchester City player is fit. I've assumed that a lot of Arsenal players are fit. So it should be a pretty good, tightly knit contest. But it's this midfield battle that I think is going to be key and pivotal. You're looking at major duels. I think Rodri and Odegaard. I think Havertz and Stones. Stones is a really interesting one for me because the amount that Pep lets Stones drift, he sometimes picks up crazy positions like here. And that makes it uncomfortable for Havertz. You've got one of two options there. You can either use Havertz and communicate to the likes of Rice to be able to watch this man and watch this space, or you can be bold, you can be brave, and you can push Havertz and tell him to mark Stones. Now this is going to be a lot on the forward play. It's going to be a lot on Havertz. But if you do it, I think it makes Rice's job and Jorginho's job a little bit easier. Then you're looking to transition. It's going to be a lot on the legs. You're asking him to do a lot of work. But if you stop Stones going into those channels, into those pockets of space, you stop Man City being able to recycle the ball. And that's what they want to do. They want to play through the lines and just make sure that they can rotate that ball as quickly as possible through the channels. They want to work Arsenal. But if you make sure that you're diligent, you're able to follow the plays, stop those passing lanes. That's what we want to do. Stop these passing lanes and make sure that Man City find it as difficult as possible to be able to push through that Arsenal line. Now, we spoke about Man City playing that higher line, playing and pushing up. Arsenal need to do exactly the same, but from a deeper position. I think we're going to expect that Manchester City are going to have most of the ball. It's not going to be a massive discrepancy. I think you're going to see like 55 to 45, but I think they'll have more of the ball, especially being at home. You're looking for Saliba, White, Gabriel and Kiwior to be really brave here and push up. You're asking them to really push high up the pitch, hold that offside line as high as possible, because that then makes, in the same vein as Man City, that then makes Jorginho's and Rice's life a little bit easier. It means there's less space for Man City to push the ball through. It means that it's more difficult for them to find those pockets, to find those channels. But, of course, with that, there's always going to be a problem. You've then got the counter-attack, or the wide opportunities, I should say, of Doku playing in behind, you've got Foden playing in behind, and of course you've got Erling Haaland, which is the final major duel that I want to talk about, and that is William Saliba onto Erling Haaland. We've talked about the man-marking system, the physical duels, the battles. I think Saliba onto Haaland is going to be the make or break for Arsenal defensively, but also Man City going forwards. If Haaland gets the better of him, it's going to be a rough day. But I think Saliba is just up to the test, and if he wins that duel, it almost puts Arsenal on a better footing to be able to go forwards, a platform for them to build upon. This game is filled with duels, and if they win their duels, Arsenal, I think they've got a massive, massive chance. And for me, this is how they beat Manchester City, utilising their pace, utilising their quality. I think Saka against Guardiola is a major mismatch. I can see Saka doing very well out on this left-hand side. The same I can see it for Ake, Akanji. I can see it all the time. Saka is a fantastic player, and if he's on his game, he can really rip that Manchester City left-hand side, especially with the fact that Doku is not really going to be a more defensive-minded player. It's going to be difficult for Man City to stop that left-hand side, especially with how good Arsenal have been. And then you've got Odegaard drifting into these positions. I can see a goal coming for Arsenal, but it's about stopping Manchester City first. Do this, and I think they've got a fantastic chance. But my question to you guys is, how do you see this game playing out? What do you think is going to happen? And let me know your score predictions in the comment section below. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something new, and I hope to see you in the next one. But until then, my friends, take care.